Are you a parent who is feeling overwhelmed by your child's constant tantrums and meltdowns and emotional outbursts? Maybe you feel like you have to walk on eggshells around your house because you don't know what the next thing is going to be that's going to trigger them and set them off and ruin the next couple of hours or maybe the whole day. Parents, if that is you, you are not alone. In fact, some recent statistics have shown that up to 1 in 5 kids are dealing with some sort of mental, emotional, behavioral struggle like that. And honestly, I think those statistics are probably a little bit low. I think we have way more than that aren't really being diagnosed or officially talked about. So we have a lot of kids struggling, which means we need to have a conversation about what's really going on and what can you do to address that underlying root issue and not just try to put a temporary bandage on it with different medications or therapies or behavioral modifications. This makes me think of a story of one of our kiddos here at Thrive. Amazing little dude, even more amazing mom. And she had all the techniques, the therapies, the approaches. She was a therapist herself, and she was able to help give him the resources and the tools to handle his emotions and to take a breath. And he had all of that, but was still struggling. And the issue was not that he didn't know what to do or not that he didn't have the resources. It's that internally he was so wound up, so high strung that he didn't have the ability to have that wiggle room, right? As soon as something triggered him, the response was immediate, right? The gap between the stimulus and the response was non-existent. Once we got that kid scanned, adjusted on his care plan, did amazing. So much more adaptability, so much more wiggle room, and then the amazing techniques and approaches that his mom was so good at were able to be utilized and able to be taken in and actually used to their full advantage. So that's what we need to do. Yes, that traditional approach of behavioral modification and different techniques you can do as a parent are important, right? We need to seek that out as parents, and we need to make sure that we are putting our kids in positions to succeed with the proper parenting. But you can be fighting a massive uphill struggle if you're doing everything perfectly and your kid is still stuck in a survival sympathetic storm internally. So that's what I want to talk about. How can we unlock that internal healing and adaptability so that everything else you're doing as a parent can be more effective and you can get more out of it? So really what this comes down to is a nervous system for a kid that is stuck in overwhelm, is stuck in stress. Usually what we see is this is rooted in an overwhelming amount of sensory input. And that's a big, I guess, reframing that I want you to get out of this is we think of the issues that a kid is dealing with as outputs, right? It's the outbursts, it's the behavior, it's the external struggle that we see as the problem, but more often than not, those external struggles are a result of bad input into the brain and into the nervous system. Garbage in means garbage out. So if we want to correct the output, if we want to correct the behavioral piece of it, we've got to correct the input. We've got to address that internal noise so that the output can correct and resolve itself as well. So what do we do at Thrive to think about that? We are going to pump the brakes and restore a balance internally. What does that mean? There's 2 different modes of your nervous system. There's the gas pedal, which is known as the sympathetic nervous system. That is your fight or flight. Your stress response exists for a reason. There's times that we need to be in that survival, fight or flight, sympathetic storm. Fight or flight is the gas pedal. The brakes, that parasympathetic function, that is wellness, rest, relaxation, digestion, immune system. That overall positive side of our nervous system is the brake pedal. The balance in between these two is at the root of everything we see kids struggling with. If we're stuck in stress because our brain and our nervous system is so overwhelmed and so hyperstimulated from a sensory perspective, it is going to set off alarm bells. And then that RPM ticker, right? If we think of this gas versus brake balance, instead of being down here at a 1 or a 2, it's up here at a 7, 8, 9 out of 10. And at that state, it doesn't take a whole lot to push you over the edge to reach that tipping point. And now you're getting triggered, you're getting set off, and it doesn't take much, right? That's the frustrating things. Sometimes it is the littlest change of plans or being told no or something that doesn't go their way or the sibling gets what they wanted and they didn't. And now we are struggling. So what we need to do to address that is restore this balance. How do we do that? It's correcting that sensory input first. That is really what subluxation is at its base, definition. That subluxation is a disconnection in your nervous system. It's instead of good brain nutrition, brain input, brain sensory food, it's SOS. It's stress and alarm bells. I often relate it like this to parents. Instead of a calm, quiet environment, maybe some elevator music on in the background, it is Metallica blaring from the ceiling as loud as possible. Maybe that's fun for you in a certain context, right? Maybe you like the concert. But when you've got a kid that's trying to do their homework, trying to regulate emotions, you don't want that extra noise and sensory bombardment because it ramps them up so that then anything else in their actual external environment is pushing them over the tipping point. So that's at the root what we need to do. We need to calm down the internal fight or flight stress response, that gas pedal that gets stuck on internally, so that the external, so the outside inputs don't push that kid over the edge. Where does this come from? That's a question we get from a lot of parents. Why are they dealing with this? What we're talking about, this conversation with emotions, behavior, that usually doesn't show up until a little bit later on in life. Maybe it is 2 or 3, 5 or 6, or into that school age range. But what we see is that there were early warning signs of that taking place even before then. In fact, we see stuff like birth stress, birth intervention, birth trauma. Usually that involves injury to this base of the neck, this base of the skull, upper neck area, your brainstem, your vagus nerve. Damage to that sets a kid in a fight or flight stressed mode so that then they're behind the 8 ball for everything else. That shows up as colic, reflux, constipation, nursing, latching challenges right away. And then maybe down the road, ear infections or motor and speech delays, or just a tone and attention in a kid that is way, way more ramped up than it should be. We see those things as early warning signs of that storm of stress, that gas pedal mode that gets stuck on. The reason that upper neck specifically is so important and such a key connection, there's a nerve in here called the vagus nerve, comes out of the base of your skull and runs by these first couple of cervical vertebrae and does almost everything in your GI system, your immune system, your emotional regulation when it comes to that brake pedal. The parasympathetic calming wellness side of your nervous system is that vagus nerve. So if we're stuck in this area, you don't have any down regulation. It's like you got a Lamborghini engine and a bicycle pedal brakes, which is not a good scenario. And here's the cool thing. Typically with medications, with that sort of approach, the answer is to not bring up the brakes. It's to take that Lamborghini engine and medicate it away, dampen it, take away that kid's superpowers. We want to unlock their superpowers and make sure that they can reach their full potential. So instead of trying to change that side of them, let's just raise the brake pedal, raise that ability to counterbalance it, turn that calming side of the nervous system back on so that that kid can fully express their own personality and be the best version of them, whatever that looks like. The bottom line is we cannot make parenting, nobody can make parenting easy, but it can be easier if your kid is dealing with some of these struggles and they are not getting the help that they need. So that's what we're here for. Check out the article we have linked here, the podcast that's on that's in our bio from Experience Miracles. Those are great resources to dig into this topic even more. And then if you have questions for our team, please reach out. Let's get your kids scanned. Let's get them scheduled, because that's the first step at Thrive, is see if this is what's taking place, right? We have neurological tests and scans that measure that gas versus brake balance, that see if you have that fight or flight stress mode turned on in their system so that we can put together a game plan to undo that, get them back in a better regulated state so your life can look a lot different day to day. We're here to help. Reach out if you have any questions. Can't wait to meet you soon and help your family thrive.